Hey, welcome to Probate Weekly. I'm Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media, your host. We do this every week, interview top people in the business. And the most common question I get asked, without a doubt, is how do I build a successful or big or how do I build a probate related business, whether it be an attorney or very commonly real estate agents. Today, we're lucky to have a guy who has no doubt, I don't think he'll say this, but I can say this because he's modest and I'm going to brag on him a little bit. He has no doubt seen more realtors do more probate deals than anybody else in Southern California. He no doubt has worked with more probate attorneys on helping them through their probate cases. I've seen him personally teach more probate attorneys in the probate courtroom in Los Angeles than anybody else. We're excited to have today Kevin Sayles, lawyer's title. Kevin, thanks for coming back to Probate Weekly.
Oh, thanks for having me, Bill. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
So, I get asked that question. I'm sure you do too. What's the best way to build my probate business? And I think when I get asked that question, I just take a deep sigh and think, I've done so much. It's been, 6 years I've been working at this nonstop when I went into the probate niche specifically. I'm sure you can ask the same question. How does somebody who wants to build a successful niche of probate or build a business around probate real estate, where they get started, what should the things be they focus on?
I think the first thing with probate is very, I was going to say technical, but I like to say has a lot of logistics in it. There's a lot of bells and whistles that you got to turn this and you got to do that. So knowing the process is really one of the big things. The first thing I think anyone should do is understand the process, learn the process before anyone goes out running, trying to get probate deals or get attorneys on their team to send them probate business. I think they got to understand and know the process very well. So I say, go to a class, go to a workshop. I teach them, learn probate, learn that process and get some deals under your belt, close some transactions so that you understand how it all works before you start really trying to build your business.
Now, I'm going to say for any real estate agent here who's in California, we have two forms that every agent should read before at the very beginning of that process to talk about learning. One's the probate purchase addendum, one is a probate listing addendum. If you're a real estate agent, you have forms, they're free, you should read them because I literally have conversations with real estate agents every day who will argue about things and I'll say, well, did you read the form? It's all laid out right there, right? And so I know that's part. And then I know when you talk about classes, really this is how I started and I built my business. It must be more, 2 years before I started, so it must be like in 2017, 16 or 17, I want to say 17, that you were giving classes to real estate agents at various real estate offices in the days when we had kind of open office meetings and such. And I saw that and called you up and invited you to speak at the office I had. And I thought, what a great niche, because we all know people are getting older. We all, people who inherit property are more likely to be, motivated to sell the property because they didn't live there before typically. It just seems like that's not always the case, but it just seemed like what a nice niche of business. And then I remember your presentation, which was really based on more of a process of education rather than some magic pixie dust you were selling, because you don't have magic pixie dust. You're a title rep. You're selling me on the dream of working hard. And I saw that, and I was trying to offer that class from the agents that I was coaching, and so few took you up on it. I remember thinking, this is just crazy that when later, about 6 months later, I went back into personal production, I remembered that niche. I remember what I learned in your class. I called you up, we had a little conversation, and I took some certifications. So I do want to say first, thank you on behalf of the industry that you do teach those classes. Second of all, obviously we're in the post-COVID environment. Do you still do live in office classes? Do you do classes online? How would somebody who wants to learn more from you in particular, and there's other classes too, but I would definitely say you're here now, and I enjoyed it when I saw you do it. And I've seen in the past also you did some online ones. How would somebody looking for more information find you in the classes that you're doing?
Well, that's good. I think the best thing to do is to reach out to me and let me know you're looking, because I just did a class, I want to say a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, at a real estate board. I'm probably going to have one coming up in a month at a different real estate board. So, I do those often because the real estate boards want a class taught. They want a class taught on probate. I also do them in real estate offices regularly. And if I have a group of people, I have a group that I trained recently. There's about 12 to 15 folks, and they're like, we want to learn this. I think they're all on the same real estate team. They said, we want to learn probate how the process works on a probate transaction. And so I put together a class specifically for them. So, if someone reaches out to me and if they're just an individual, then I can put them on the list so that when I have a class, I'll email them and let them know it's coming up. Or if they're part of a real estate board or part of a real estate office, I can come out and do training specifically for them. I mean, we're in the early part of this year, and I believe I've done about 3 or so, maybe 4 or 5 probate classes in individual offices already, and 1 at a real estate board already. We're just barely 4 months into the year. So definitely. And you mentioned something very key, Bill. You said read the form. You are absolutely correct. The zip forms, it's a part of the contract, it's a part of the escrow, it's a part of the agreement. They've got to read those forms because so much stuff is spelled out in those that they may not know about. And I extend it even farther. Do they read their prelim? Do they read?
Whoa, that's a whole nother level. That's already your forms they should be reading. I'm just talking about, you write the offer, it says right on there, probate purchase addendum, but I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off, but.
I think it's funny because I ask agents this regularly. I say, hey, do you get a home inspection? Yeah. Well, when that home inspection comes back, do you read that home inspection? Yeah, we read it because the inspector went in, he said the faucet was leaking. He said the floor had a crack in it. And do you expect that the inspector fixed the crack in the floor or fixed the faucet while he was in there? They say, no, he's just giving us a report. I say, yes, that's exactly what we do as a title company. Our report is not on the physical condition of the property, but it's on the ownership rights, So when people have their whatever situation, they should read not only their forms on the probate stuff, but read the prelim. I've had people in a probate sale or not a probate sale that they didn't know was going to be a probate sale, and because they never read their prelim, they go months down the road and didn't realize, oh, we're working with John and John doesn't own it. The property's still in John's mother's name.
Okay, now we're getting the meat of this. I want to go there. But again, I want to start at the beginning. For those people who just watched a little bit of the video in the beginning, to say, if you're interested, call Kevin. He has classes. And the ones at the real estate offices, even though it's not your board, usually those boards allow people to come in. You pay a nominal fee, $5 more if you're not a member or something. So I would definitely urge you to do that and go into this on a deep level. So, okay, so I know that we covered a few things here, but I also know that if we don't go slowly, people are going to follow up on it. So let's talk first about, since you want to talk about the title report. So one of the things that you offer as a service as a title representative is that you allow us to get a prelim before we list the property. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, just recently I called Kevin. I have a estate with 4 different properties for sale. 2 that have an additional party and 2 that don't. The 2 that don't, we can list now. The 2 that do, we got to figure out what to do. And I'm not sure, the attorney is still working on it. But by getting the prelims, we confirmed which 2 were which. The documents matched up. We're getting those 2 listed. Hopefully we'll put them into escrow and we'll sell them. So talk a little bit about, you do offer this, not necessarily to every agent, but those that work with you, obviously, and have to pull through those title reports to closings. Talk about the importance of looking at the report before you even list the property.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to be clear, usually what we do is before you list, before the client has committed to you, we will do a property profile, but it's an extended property profile. I have my 5 points that I look at to make sure if there's any issues.
Yes.
That's going to be...
And we did that. I'm sorry, I left it off. You're right. So just for the record, we did that. I knew where the title was on those 4, so we were able to move forward. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And then when you list it, when they've committed, if they've signed up with the attorney to move forward with the probate, at that point, then we'll order a prelim, because we just want them to know that they've committed and they're moving forward with whatever sale or whatever they're doing on the property. With either one, either looking at the actual documents or the prelim, because there's not going to be any difference. If I go pull all the deeds on a property, that's not going to tell me a different story than when I pull the prelim, because the prelim is based on all the deeds. But whichever one it is, you have to look at those documents because it's your starting point.
Right.
I've had cases where they were probating the estate of John, and they should have been probating the estate of Jane, because John died before Jane, but they didn't look at the prelim to see that both of them were on title and they were joint tenants. So that's always your starting point. And one of the things I start in my training classes is, where do we start? Whether you're out door knocking and someone says, yeah, we want to sell, but it was my grandmother's property. Or right off the bat, maybe you're calling from probate leads and you're calling and they say, yeah, I filed this petition. The start is always, let's look and see how title was held, because that's going to tell us where we are and what we have to deal with, if it's a joint tenancy or not, if it's one person, if they had a trust, et cetera, all the myriad of ways they could hold title to that property. But that's going to tell us what the starting point is.
So yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the too many agents look at that as work as a problem versus that to me is the opportunity to shine with my customer. Because if I call Kevin, and sometimes there's even things that are beyond Kevin's ability, not that that's often, but it does happen from time to time. Well, then we get a whole explanation as to what's to be done. We have a title. Sometimes the officer or the attorney for the company will come back and tell you what the issue is or what has to be done. And I take that back to my attorney. Now, what do you think the attorney thinks of me when I've gone through and pre-checked? I went online, I got the profile, which they have. I went to the title company. We looked at this problem. We researched the problem. We said, well, based on that, we got to do A, B, and C. What better way is there to earn respect of your customer and or your attorney than doing the work before it's a problem?
That's right. And you talk about building your value, with this really hit home a lot last year with the NAR settlement and now the new law in California. You have to have the BRBC signed or whatever those forms are called. But the thing is, now agents really have to show their value. They really have to be able to prove their value. And this is one of the great ways you can do that, because when there's a deceased party, a lot of times everyone thinks, oh yeah, it's grandma's house. It's always been free and clear. They don't know there's 3 loans on the property that no one knew were on there. Or maybe they were paid off, but they were never removed from the property, or a myriad of other different issues that people think everything's fine because it was always grandpa's house. But sometimes the paperwork wasn't done right, or sometimes there was an error in their chain of title and that sort of thing. So until you start looking into it and finding those issues and coming back with a solution, you may not be showing the true value you can bring to the table for that client.
Especially some of these older deeds when nothing was done for 30, 40 years because grandma had it. Unbeknownst to you, grandma had another husband, or, when they got married, dad had another wife that you didn't know about, and there's other kids, and all these are things that come up. How many different title problems have you seen on what otherwise was an easy standard listing? I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen 10s or 20. I'm sure you've seen hundreds.
I would say, maybe you could say thousands. I'm just looking at my notes right here. Just from this morning, one of the prelims that we completed on a trust sale today, I reviewed it and I looked at it, and there's a problem. They got the property from a bank back in 2005, and there's a problem. The deed did not include the second parcel. So this lot considers of 2. The ownership of this property consists of 2 parcels, parcel 1 and parcel 2. Parcel 2 was omitted from that deed. So now we have a trust sale, and what's going to happen? We got a deceased party trust sale, and now part of the property that should be owned by this seller was not included when they bought the property. The issue.
It's an issue. And I think the other thing is realtors, we have to look at those not as problems, though they're problems, but they're for our customers, but they're really opportunities for stepping up and demonstrating our expertise. Yeah. So, okay. So our takeaways for anybody listening to this is read your preliminary title report when you get it. First, do your appropriate profile before you list the property, before you get involved. If you have questions, talk to your title rep. Once you get the go-ahead or the prelim, read the prelim. What you don't know, go back to your title rep and get explanations, get in writing, try to resolve ahead of time. And of course, if you write a listing and or purchase contract, read the appropriate CAR forms. In California is the only state that has these, but the forms lay out everything. I had a discussion today with an agent this morning. He said, well, I didn't know that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, it's right in the form. It says either court confirmation is required or court confirmation it's not required. It says may be required. Why do you think it says maybe instead of not? Because it may be. It's just the court's telling you, be prepared. This is probate, man. Put on your seatbelt, get the airbag lined up, get your hands on the wheel and buckle in, man. This is going to be a wild ride. It's a probate case sometimes. So there you go. Okay, so let's talk about what are the kinds of common things that when you get a profile, or somebody sends you a profile, comes back as a problem, or when somebody has a prelim, comes back to, if you had to list off 2 or 3 of those common things, obviously any defect is a defect, but what are the more common ones somebody should look for?
I'll list a couple of them, and I'm not going to give all of my algorithm or my formula. Coke never shares their formula, right? So I can't give the whole recipe, but I'll give you a couple of the common things that we see. So
that's the tease, man. That's the tease to be a Kevin Sayles customer. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, one of the things is the vesting, how they hold title to the property. Again, this morning I was looking at one, and this is what the deed says. It says John Doe, trustee of the trust, and Jane Doe, an individual, as joint tenants. Well, most of us know joint tenancy in California, the law is that joint tenancy is for natural persons. That means a corporation cannot be a joint tenant. A trust cannot be a joint tenant. Therefore, even though they put joint tenancy on the deed, it's really tenancy in common. So because it was just this morning, I haven't gotten all the details yet. If that other individual had passed away and they're thinking, oh, great, it was joint tenancy, so now the trust just has it. It's not. It's a separate ownership. If that individual is deceased, you have to probate that individual's estate, and then the trust would, sell the other half. So that's one thing, is vesting issues. Investing, how they hold title, who's on title, and how they hold title is a big one. And then liens of the owners is another one, where it could be that no one knew Grandpa had. I had one just in the last couple of weeks where there's a child support lien for this person. Now, we don't think it's actually his, but I've seen them where they are. I've seen them where you had a 78-year-old person and no one knew he had a child when he was 65, and he's paying child support for that person. So a child support lien pops up. So there could be all different types of liens, whether it's loans that are on the property that they didn't know were there, or whether it's things like child support or a judgment or a tax lien. Those liens that pop up on a property are another big issue, because they either prevent your sale or cause, have to be taken care of by paying for them. So money comes out of the proceeds, etc. But those are surprises that most people don't like to see, that are very common.
You'll see like city citations. I have a vacant lot where a property burned down, and we're selling it vacant. Now we got cited by the city. The client got cited by the city. Went in, had a demo, had removed, did all they're supposed to do, got the permit signed off, or the deficiency signed off, but never got recorded with the county. So that when we pull the prelim, there's this lien showing. We had to go back all through the process, give them the paperwork. But we did that when we got the prelim. We didn't wait until the day before escrow. When you get that phone call, we can't close. Why? Well, this lien popped up. Well, no, it didn't pop up. It was on the prelim all along. It was item 17 on the prelim, and you didn't even look at it. You just filed the prelim. So, okay. Yeah. So those are kind of common issues. I think the answer that you're saying there is anything that looks out of the ordinary, or I would say you should read the prelim. Anything you don't understand, I feel like that's why you have Kevin, right? He'll tell you what those things are because he's an expert. And if there is something that stumps Kevin, he has a team behind him. That's his job, is to go to the team and get the answer, bring it to you. So the best practice is read those documents, read the prelim, the profile, read the prelim. And if there's anything you don't understand, that's why you have a title representative to help you understand that, and or bring the resources to bear so that your customer doesn't get penalized at the end.
Absolutely. And a lot of times these things are written in pretty plain English. People don't want to read them, or they're concerned. I've never seen that before. But then when you actually read it, you realize, oh, it's written in plain English. It says right here exactly what it is. Or, you were talking about a lien like a substandard lien. The substandard lien won't tell anything. It'll say you have to contact this inspector to find out what the problem is. So a lot of times they're written in plain English. It makes it easy to look at it and go, okay, this is the next step, or this is what we need to do from here.
I love when I read the document, and my favorite line, sometimes you get attorneys who are, overly aggressive, and they're representing the other party, and they're trying to put me in my place. And I'll say something to them, and they'll say, well, how can you say that? Are you an attorney? And I would just say, no, I just read it. It's in English, and I read English. It's not that difficult. The truth is, there are things attorneys understand the implications of the words, but the words themselves are written in English in these contracts, and so we shouldn't shy away from reading it and at least bringing our knowledge to bear, and then bring the right resources in that are needed. So,
absolutely.
Okay, so that's all about being a realtor and doing our job, and attorneys expect that when we have a probate case, when we're working with our clients, and or when we're referring to them. Let's talk about best practices for attorneys, because I know a lot of your clients are attorneys. A lot of my clients are attorneys, and fortunately a lot of people watching this, a number of them are attorneys. Let's talk about the best practices for attorneys in a probate case. I would think, if I was a probate attorney, I would want to make sure I vetted who the realtor was on a transaction, because I know I make a difference for the positive. I know other realtors who make a difference for the negative. Talk about attorneys. Do they ever come to you for referrals? Is that something that, and if so, what is an attorney looking for to make the decision on behalf of their client, or make the referral on behalf of the client? What are they looking for to refer the right deal to the right real estate agent?
Well, I don't really ever have attorneys. I mean, it's very rare that attorneys come to me for a referral. I think I had one recently, and they're like, they had a listing in Sacramento, and they're like, "Do you know anybody in Sacramento?" Because it was so far. They tend to have people on a lot of the local ones. But I know one thing that truly helps is when the agent understands the process, because there's things in the process that we're going to require in order to close. There's documents we need to have copies of. There's timelines. And if the agent doesn't know those things, things can get a little convoluted, or promises can be made to heirs that aren't really accurate, and that sort of thing. So it really helps when the agent knows the process, because the agent can also help bridge the gap. Sometimes the clients are like, well, I haven't reached the attorney. The attorney didn't tell me this or didn't tell me that.
Right.
And if the agent understands the process, they can help explain to that person. I'll give a prime example. Prior to closing, there, on probates, there's 3 documents that we need. It's always the same. So if we're scrambling to get those, we're supposed to be closing tomorrow, and we're scrambling to get those, and those documents haven't been provided, that can make a challenging situation, that can delay your closing. Whereas if the agent knew up front, oh yeah, maybe a week ago, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to be getting ready to close next week, so let me make sure I have these documents from the attorney. Then it's not scrambling at the last minute. Can I tell an interesting story, Bill?
Yeah, of course.
We closed the transaction.
Kevin, you're Kevin Sayles. You can say whatever you want.
We closed the transaction last month, and the client that sent the transaction over to us has closed several probates. I'm using my air quotes, probates. During the process, we were needing the notice of proposed action. She's like, what is this all about? Like, what are you talking about? We don't need this. I've never had this in any other transaction. When we got into the meat and got into the details, every quote unquote probate transaction that this agent had closed was where the probate case was already over. The property had been distributed, and she was selling for the heirs.
Right.
That's not really a probate sale. That's a regular sale after a probate case.
Right.
This was actually the first one that she was selling, where the administrator of the estate was, dealing with the probate and in the process, and selling while the estate was going through probate. That's why she had no clue of the documents. So I thought that was really interesting, because she and I had talked numerous times. She had done trust sales where the person died, they had a trust, but she didn't know these procedures. And I thought she knew them because she told me all the experience she had in probate sales. So that's a big help. I've heard attorneys mention that a lot, that what we need is someone who understands the process.
Right. And I think that what you're pointing out is a difference between the process between post-probate distribution, which is really a regular sale. Trust and estates are nice. If there's litigation, it can look like a probate sale, but 99% are not litigated. They're just like a regular sale where the title is held in trust by a person. And even many probate sales, you mentioned the notice of proposed action, and I would say some title companies require that on every probate sale if there's full authority. Some don't if there's only one heir. And oftentimes the attorney will argue with me, and I'll say, look, this is the title company's requirement. You might be right, it's not required. They want it for this reason. Maybe there was litigation, maybe there were a number of objectors in the past. Whatever the reason is, no title insurance, no sale. So the attorney can be right legally, but wrong in terms of trying to get the job done. My job is to bridge that. And sometimes it's not required. But getting a notice of proposed action is a whole different world than a court confirmation sale. And so I had a recent case where two attorneys were fighting over it, 2 parties to a transaction, one a probate estate and one a trust. And my client was a trust saying, I want you to handle the sale. And the other attorney picked some other guy who was experienced in probate. And I went online and noticed, well, he'd done some probate sales as a buyer's agent. He'd done some listing regular probates. But I said, this is a court confirmation. And a couple questions. I made a list of the questions that I cover. And the attorney goes, yeah, I think actually you should handle this. I guess I went through. They didn't, because most attorneys, I can tell you in LA County, I've tracked every court confirmation sale for the last 6 years now. I have a spreadsheet with every case number, the attorney, the estate, the property address, the terms of the property, and the result, denied, continued, or sold. There's not that many attorneys who've done one, a court confirmation. It's not that common. There's maybe 30 a month, and a lot done by certain attorneys, and most don't. So when you say the process, don't oversell it. I think it's important to be honest. On the flip side, if you do some of the standard probate cases, it gives you the chance to do the occasional confirmation sale. So I think that's a good point. Okay, so let's talk about let me step back a little bit from the probate part. You've obviously been a very successful business person. I know you've been in the same company, which to me is always a clue of success. That when people bounce around, it's because sometimes the company, but sometimes it's also the rep. And I know you've been with Laura Stahl as long as I've known you, and I know you to be successful by the business, your reputation, and such. Let's talk about kind of some basic fundamentals of building a successful business, whether you're a title rep or a realtor or an attorney. What do you see yourself focused on that maybe the other people in your industry or your competitors maybe don't do as well or consistently as you do?
For me and in my business, and I think it's the same for anyone in a job that's sales related, is constant growth. There's that saying that no one is ever maintaining. You're either growing or you're dying or you're pulling back. And so for me, it's constant growth to constantly try to beat my last month, improve my numbers. And to do that, what it requires is focus on continual prospecting, continually doing things that will bring new clients and new business into my fold, and reaching out to different parties, follow up, all the things that we all should be doing in sales, prospecting, follow up, nurturing past relationships, nurturing relationships with clients that already know what it's like to work with me. So those are things that I think have made me successful and continue to make me successful. And I see it sometimes with some of my peers that I don't want to say they rest on their laurels, but maybe they don't get up as early as they used to. Maybe they don't make as many calls as they used to. And we all have that. There's nothing wrong with rest. We have to rest, right? But for me, I still have, as long as that fire is still in me, I'm going to let it burn. And that fire and drive is still in me to do more and produce more. It's the way God built me, and I'm thankful for that. Sometimes I have to tone it down so I don't stress myself out, right? But I think that's what it is. It's the drive and the desire to do more and to grow. I set goals for myself. I have goals written on my wall here on my desk, and so it makes me it keeps me focused on moving forward and continuing to prospect and continuing to grow.
I heard explained to me that life is like a slow downward elevator, that if you're not always going up, that you're going to go down by default. So you have to go up a certain amount to stay even, and even more so to increase. So let's flip it around a little bit. You've been successful in this business. You've been around the 6 years that I know. You've seen hundreds, if not thousands of real estate agents. I imagine thousands of real estate agents, of which I'm sure 10% have been successful. And I'm sure, half are below average by definition, and the vast majority don't get the traction they want. What do you see as the one or two key practices in those real estate agents and attorneys that are growing their business versus those that are struggling?
Well, attorneys are different. I think it's just what I said a moment ago, continually prospect. Our jobs are hard, right? For me, I have preliminary title reports to come in. I have 1,000 emails. I have phone calls. I have other things. I have clients to go see. And so it's hard. How do I find the time to continue to prospect for new clients for myself, right? Because that's what keeps you growing. But that's mandatory. I have to carve out. I have to make space in my day, even with all the admin work and that sort of thing that I have to do. I have to make space in my day to be able to do that prospecting. For you or for a real estate agent, it's the same thing. I mean, you have an appraisal, you have an inspection at a property, you have all these things that you have to do, but you still have to contact your sphere of influence. I was on a call just recently, and it said something to the effect of, and this is a very consistent statistic, because I've heard this statistic probably 10,000 times, maybe not 10,000 times. I've heard it basically every year for the last 25 or 27 years. I've been in this business for a little over 30 years, but I paid attention to it 25 or 27 years ago. And the statistic is something like 26% of sellers went back to the agent that they worked with previously.
Right.
But after closing, when CAR and NAR do their surveys, something like 75% of homeowners that bought with an agent or sold with an agent say, "Oh, I'm going to use them again." 75% say, "I'm going to use them the next time," but only 25% do. And I heard a statistic one time that it's a low percentage, something like only 20 or 30% of people can remember their agent's name 2 years later.
I'm sure it's worse than that, because I bet less than 10% of agents ever contact a client ever again. Yeah. They post on social media, but that doesn't really count.
It's a constant reminder to me. It's a great reminder to everyone. It's a constant reminder to me. Who's someone that I closed a deal with a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, that hasn't heard from me? And it constantly drives me. And it's the same thing, I think, for real estate agents to, deal with your past clients, deal with your prospecting. It's the same. Sales is sales, right? If I was selling shoes, it would be the same thing. If I was selling cars, it would be the same thing. If I was selling cotton swabs, it would be the same thing. Who knows me that trusts me? Let me go to them and see if they need cotton swabs, right? Sales is sales.
There's a saying, hungry dogs hunt best. And I think what it means to me is not only does a hungry dog put the effort in, but when they get a chance to kill, they kill. And my experience with, for example, the top the top attorneys in Southern California, in terms of volume of businesses, they're always working on business development. Yeah. By volume, I don't know anybody does more than, say, Paul Horn. He's always got a seminar or program of this or that, right? And you might think, well, but he's got 1 million cases. But from his perspective, he wants to do better. He wants to do more. He wants to dominate. And there's other attorneys the same boat. I can name the same names, but the ones who do these talks at the real estate offices and go out to the board of realtors like you do, they're the same people year after year. And they're also ones who seem to do the outside portion of the business. And the reason why is that if you're out looking for business, you appreciate it, you respond to it better, you respond to it harder. And so you have to have certain activities that you do on a regular basis. So, one of the most common prospecting technique that realtors are taught in probate, one that I don't do, I never really did, was cold calling by buying data of filings and cold calling petitioners and or cold calling attorneys. Now, I will say, I don't know anybody who's done that over time who's been successful at it. You know more realtors than I do. Is that something that you see as now, what I will say is, I buy the probate data because I want to know who the attorneys are. Or when somebody calls me, I have all the information on their case. I can quickly get their case number and look it up. So I do buy the data. I do think information is power, but I don't cold call petitioners. I found other ways to generate business. What do you see real estate agents is cold calling petitioners, given all the challenges we have with calling today, effective, and or cold calling attorneys effective? Or are there other techniques that you see that are also or more effective?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak with specifics to that because I don't cold call on the leads. But what I will say is and this has always been the case in my business, I have clients who only door knock and they've been successful doing that. I have clients who only cold call and they've been successful. I have clients who only do postcards, but it's about the volume, I mean, maybe with door knocking, you have to knock on 50 doors a day, but with postcards, you got to send 1,000 a week. I don't know those exact numbers, but I think it all works. I think every method of marketing will work. Now, like you mentioned, it is more challenging. I get spam calls. I get someone calling wanting to do construction work on my house at least once, if not twice, every single day, Monday through Friday. Wow. And so does that make me more insensitive to someone calling to sell me something? Absolutely does. It makes me not want to deal with them as much. But I think, leads are like seeds, right? A farmer doesn't look at every seed and figure out which one to plant. He throws all those seeds on the dirt, lets them sprout up. And so I think it's the same for all of our business. We have to go out and generate business. And if for you it's cold calling, great. If for you it's something else, great. Bill, I think you were very unique. I mean, you mentioned that you track every case, you've tracked every court confirmation sale, where it was sold. There's probably no one else on the planet that knows that level of detail. I can't think of anyone that would know every court confirmation sale and has done that for 6 years. I think you said, and that's certainly true. I just feel like you created a different niche and a different way of going about it to get business, and that's I think key. I mean, I do title insurance. Title is like rubbing alcohol. Back when the mortgage meltdown happened, I had to figure out what's a different angle, what's something that I'm very knowledgeable about, so that I could bring real value to a person, and that's a different angle that would be beneficial for folks. And look, I believe Jack Welch, the guy who ran GE, he said, business is a series of trial and error. And so I didn't just one day go, probate, I'm going to do probate. I tried a few things. I tried doing it with vacant land. I tried doing it with commercial. I tried doing it with probate, because those were all things that I'm like, I have a lot more knowledge than the average title rep does on these areas. And there's some idiosyncrasies with selling vacant land, with selling commercial property, with selling a probate property that everyone may not know about that could get them hung up.
Right.
And I started moving forward on it. And the thing is, with vacant land and commercial at the time of the mortgage meltdown, no one was buying those. The funding was not available for those, so the properties weren't moving. I had great traction. I had great success with my marketing. The leads that I was using were working out really well, but there was no closed transactions from it. With probate, guess what? Person died. They have to sell the property. So it worked out better that probate stuck because people still had to sell the property, and those were still moving, even though the mortgage meltdown had put some tight belts around our waist. So that's kind of how it came to fruition. And so I don't know the answer to that question, but I would say I've always in my entire career, I've been a title rep since 1999. I've been in the industry since 1993. In my entire career, I've always seen people that did all forms of prospecting and were successful at it. It's just how hard they go at it.
Well, if I could reform your answer a little bit, knowing you and being in the same spot with some overlap, I would say, I think what I hear you saying is, it's not so much how you prospect, it's you better do something. You better do something well and regularly. It better look like a lot. I tell people you better spend 3 or 4 hours a day on that something and be really good at that something to be the one to generate the business out, whether it be cold calling, door knocking, postcarding. In my case, I used to go to court every day, and I'd spend 3 or 4 hours going to court. That's where we initially met. Not met, we reacquainted, and started the process a little bit more seriously by going to court. When that shut down at COVID, I had to change, and I went to social media, and I've used video. But I do about 3 or 4 hours of video a day. That's my lead generation methodology, and it works for me, but I have to do it. I have to do it well. I have to do it more than my competition. And so for everybody, I think you need to find your niche and where you create value. And mine was more court and procedures, but there's a million ways to do probate. You can do senior housing, you can do health providers, you can do estate planning, I do a class on 11 different ways. There's actually a million different micro niches within that. Find your lane. And then second of all, as Kevin has said, whatever it is you do, I don't think either of us have any real surety as to what doesn't work, but try it, and when you find something that works, just work the heck out of it until it gets you the business you need. I think that's what I hear you saying, Kevin.
Yeah, and Bill, can I turn the table around and ask you a question?
Sure, of course.
How did you...
Kevin Sayles, you're Kevin Sayles, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to interview you now. So Bill, you like I said, you're very unique in your background in probate. And what made you decide, or what told you that, yes, this is the right way to go about it, when you decided, I'm going to start going to the courthouse and looking at these court confirmation sales and doing all of that work that you did in the beginning?
Well, it's a long answer. The shorter version of it would be, I was taking a probate certification class, probate mastery, and the coach said you should go at least once and check out the court, which makes sense. If this is your service and you're helping your customer at this service, at least figure out what it looks like. So I went to court one day, and I came back, I was amazed. Like, there's people there. The people I'm trying to reach marketing-wise were there in the room. There were petitioners there. There were attorneys there. There were real estate investors there. And I learned a lot while I was watching this go on. I said, I'll come back the rest of the week. I was in a kind of business planning mode. And I originally was going to go for one day. And I said, well, I'll just go tomorrow. And then I ended up going for the week. Then I started going, I'm going to do this for a month and really pay attention, take notes. And at the end of that time period, I realized that there was a lane for me to be unique. And again, I think you have to find the intersection of 3 things. What you like to do. I kind of like going to court, putting on a suit and tie, pretending I was an attorney at that time. Now, I don't necessarily like to do as much today, but at that time it was a lot of fun. It was professional. It was safe. You're in the courthouse with sheriffs. There's a Starbucks there. They have good Wi-Fi. It's air conditioned. Like, it was kind of a fun thing to go work at. Second of all, it would play to my strength. I kind of look like an attorney. I kind of talk like an attorney. My father was an attorney. I'm a smart person. I learn things quickly, so it played to my strength as far as that goes. And then third of all, there was a need because I saw petitioners lost. Most of them hated their attorneys. 90% of attorneys obviously didn't know what they're doing. When you sit in court, you realize there's the 10% who are killers and they're great, and it's like watching a class and you want to take notes from them. But the other 90% of the attorneys got the case somehow, and I have no idea, but they don't know what they're doing, and they're not serving the customer, and they need a realtor like me to help them or help their customer. And so I walked away after seeing that reality and said, well, I can do that. Unique. I'm in LA County, largest probate court in America, 9 courtrooms, daily to choose from versus other areas maybe have one a couple days a week. So, again, you have to find your right lane. Mine was legal problems. Mine was originally going to court, and mine originally was, there's a rich opportunity there. And then when COVID shut down, some of that went away, so I had to kind of, how do I replicate that? So that's kind of my story of how I decided to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you've done an excellent job in doing that, Will. So I just wanted
Thanks.
to...
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great. And I think you have to find something that you're good at, that you enjoy doing. And if you don't enjoy it, like I don't enjoy cold calling, and I don't enjoy having petitioners argue with me about real estate. And so at some point, I think you need to graduate from that. Like the goal maybe is I'm going to prospect petitioners for 3 months or 6 months or a year and build some business. And then by the end of that time period, you should be building referrals and some other form of business that leverages your expertise rather than just your energy, right? You don't necessarily, there's nothing wrong with being a bricklayer, but your goal should be maybe to learn how to lay bricks. And then at some point, 6 months, a year, 2 years, have a brick company where you hire bricklayers, train them how to do it, and you can have 4 or 5 working underneath you. And that's kind of what I've tried to replicate with my business. Okay,
that's a great formula that you just laid out right there. If I were an agent and watching this, I would rewind and listen to that last minute or two one more time because you just laid it out perfectly.
What's funny is I think when you met me, I was a coach and a branch manager. And at the time, I was so frustrated because I would tell agents what to do. None of them would do it because it was hard work. And I said, well, it's not as hard work as teaching you. I'll just do it myself. And so the last 6 years, I built a business where I make a lot more money. It's a lot easier. I'm in control of it. I have agents that call me all the time and say, what's the easiest way to build a probate business? And I say, I have no idea, because the only thing I know is put the work in. I know the hard way, but it works if you put the work in. And so I think for anybody who's interested, either rewind this or give me a call. I'll be glad to walk you through it, or talk to Kevin as well. That's what we're here for. Okay. I wanted to also talk about, I think that really anybody who knows you have outstanding reputation with various attorneys. And as a result, attorneys send you business regularly. I see that, I know that's part of the process. And I'll see, like in the forum, sometimes it's funny, in the LA Bar Association, you can join as an affiliate, and there's like a forum, email and such, where attorneys kind of chat. And I'll say, anybody know a good title rep? I only use Kevin Sayles. I see this all the time, like they discovered fire or something, that they know who you are. But you've built this reputation. And so talk a little bit about what you've done to both start referral relationships with attorneys, and then what you've done to keep them going.
Yeah, about 15 or 17 years ago, an attorney that I had met 10 years earlier said, hey, we have this, something was going on in something in the law, and she and I were, this attorney and I were talking about it, and she said, we have this study group. It's about 10 to 12 of us. We get together periodically to just learn from each other and hash out details and this and that. Would you come speak to us? And I went out and spoke, and that was 2008 or 2010, something like that. And I remember being so nervous. I'd never spoke to a group of attorneys, and here I am thinking, oh, these guys are going to know everything. 10 seconds into the meeting, I realized they don't have a clue about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so it taught me that the information that I have as a title person in the details, and I'm different than the average title rep. I mean, I read a probate, a trust, an estate documents, a court order, something, every morning, usually before 9 a.m. So I've read thousands of them. And when I got into the details and I realized, oh, we keep seeing this mistake in court orders. The attorneys may not understand that this on a court order may work for court. It may not be a mistake in the court, but from a title company perspective, we don't like it that way. That's not the right way. We can't provide insurance based on that. And I started noticing things like that and different changes and different issues. And I started noticing stuff that just taught me, you know what? They don't have all the details and all the specifics about title and about real estate that I thought they had. And since then, having talked to attorneys, attorneys have told me point blank, they don't teach us any of this in law school. You learn this stuff from your paralegal after you become an attorney. Hopefully you have a good paralegal who teaches you the right way. And so I started doing workshops. Now what I do is all throughout the year, the problem cases, the challenging situations, the really big issues that we have, I keep notes on those. I look for the learning experiences in there, and then I put them in a presentation at the end of the year, along with any laws that change that affect title policies, or we get a CLTA memo every year that tells these are the laws that change that affect real estate and affect us as a title company. So I put those together in a presentation. I do that presentation annually. That's what has helped me the most grow my reputation and in being able to help attorneys, either real estate attorneys or probate trust and estates attorneys, is by keeping track of this information, putting together the presentation, and doing a presentation to them to help. And sometimes the organization or the group that I'm doing it for, whether it's the South Bay Bar Association or the Inland Empire or whatever, they'll offer MCLE, continuing education credits, based on the topic and the subject matter that I'm presenting on.
And I think as a group, attorneys are usually really good learners and enjoy learning, right? The nature of somebody who's gone through college as an undergraduate, then has gone to law school, and then gone on to pass the bar exam, is at a minimum somebody who can, take a lot of information and regurgitate it in some format, hopefully productively. But most of them tend to, in my experience, kind of enjoy learning new stuff. And so when you can give them good quality information, whether as an agent you do it yourself or you bring in Kevin as the featured speaker, to me it seems like it makes a lot of sense to give the people an opportunity to do that. So I would urge any of you to take a look at where you can bring in somebody. The continuing legal education units are valuable to attorneys. They all need to have a certain number of them, and it makes a class attractive. So reach out to Kevin or other people, other providers, to provide that. Well, look, you and I have talked a lot in the past, and we'll continue to, please God, going forward. We got a couple escrows our listings I'm working on with you, so I'm kind of stuck with you for at least a while. Just all kidding.
Hopefully a long while.
We've been together for a while, and hopefully a long ride together going forward. I really appreciate your time today. For those people who want to get a hold of you, what's the best way if they have questions or they want to go to your next class or have questions on working with you on a profile or getting set up with your profile application? And that's the other thing. If you're a customer of his, you get a chance to get this application. Talk about that a little bit as a tool. I use that all day long.
Yeah, the property profiles online, Title Pro 247. It's a great way to be able to, in just a brief moment, quickly look and see who's the owner of the property and see the deeds and that sort of thing. When it comes to probate stuff, though, I like people to call our office, because sometimes with Title Pro 247, you may not get all the documents you're looking for, because, for instance, court orders aren't read by the online systems. So then I say, call my customer service department. But yeah, they can get a hold of me. My email and my phone number's on the screen there. If you're interested in talking about something, if you have a scenario you want to talk about, I always say call me, because if you email me, I'm probably going to have some questions. Rather than us going back and forth on email, we can do it on the phone and I can get you some answers. But otherwise, email is a great way to get a hold of me. If you want to schedule a meeting with me, or if you want me to come do a workshop or training or something at your real estate office or your group of investors or law firm, then email is definitely the best for that. So either way, email, call, you'll get a hold of me, and I would look forward to following up with some of the folks that watch your show.
Kevin, thank you so much for your time as always and what you do to service our industry. If you get hold with him, again, his information is down below in the banner, or you can go to his website, LA Lawyers Title Insurance Company, LALTIC.com. It's on the screen, /Kevin Sayles -1. You get a picture of Kevin as well as his contact info as well, and other tools he has available to him. So that's a great way to get in touch with him as well. Kevin, thank you again so much for your time. As always, really appreciate what you do personally as well as on behalf of our industry.
Thank you so much, Bill. I love being here, speaking with you in the morning. So anytime that you want to have me back, I would love to be here.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much. And for the rest of you, this is Probate Weekly. We get together every week and interview leading professionals in the industry. You can get reminders by filling out at www.probateweekly.com. If you want to put your phone number in, occasionally we do text as well. You don't have to, though. But if you scroll down the page, you'll also see we're available on all the audio formats as well as past episodes on YouTube. And if you register, you'll get an email reminder that will have a link to the YouTube of the current episode. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate. If you like this, let me know. If you have questions or comments or content you'd like to see, please let me know. If you're an attorney who would like to be interviewed on this, or you have an attorney who should be, please give me that information as well. And as always, make today your best day ever.